What happens when my gentle veteran dog directly confronts a group of bald, burly bikers at the Central Park near my house? If you think the dog would back down from those tough guys, you should watch this video until the end. My dog's tense standoff to protect an unfortunate woman like me will leave you completely stunned. Central Park was my sanctuary. I often sat in my wheelchair next to the old bench under the shade of ancient elm trees. I turned my face toward the sun to let its warmth spread across my body and listen to the symphonies of the American robins. My hand gripped Max's leather leash tightly. Max, my loyal German shepherd. He wasn't just my companion, he was my guide, my eyes ever since a car accident stole my vision 3 years ago. Though the surroundings were peaceful, Max never relaxed. His ears twitched at every sound, his sharp eyes scanning the park as if anticipating trouble brewing somewhere nearby. Travis McCoy leaned against his roaring motorcycle, surrounded by a small group of leather-clad bikers, hulking figures with shaved heads and tattoos. Travis had a presence that demanded attention. He noticed me sitting quietly with Max by my side. Something about my calm demeanor, paired with the dog's disciplined posture, catching his eye. Something in his head urged him down the wrong path. He flicked his cigarette to the ground, a smirk curling his lips as he sneered. "Look at this, a princess with her perfect little pup." He stepped off his motorcycle, his buddies chuckling behind him. Travis's heavy boots thudded against the pavement as he strode across the park, straight toward me. Max noticed him first. His ears shot up, his body stiffening as a low growl rumbled from his chest. I felt the leash tighten as he tilted his head toward the approaching footsteps. "Hey," Travis called out, his voice dripping with mockery and sarcasm. "Nice dog. Does it do tricks? Can it jump through hoops or roll over for us?" I gripped the leash tighter, my heart racing. "Max," I whispered. I couldn't see the man, but I could hear the cruelty in his tone. "Leave us alone," I said firmly, my voice masking the fear bubbling inside me. But Travis didn't back off. Instead, he clapped his hands loudly, trying to provoke Max. The dog held his ground, his piercing gaze locked on Travis, though his growl deepened. "Oh, tough guy, huh?" Travis taunted, taking another step closer. A few passers-by had stopped to watch the scene unfold, but no one dared intervene. Sensing the attention, Travis decided to escalate. He raised his foot as if to kick Max. The shepherd's growl erupted into a low, raspy warning, and I shouted, "Don't you dare!" Travis didn't know that Max wasn't an ordinary dog. Before becoming my guide, Max had been a military K9, trained for high-stakes missions, and capable of taking down threats far greater than this man. As Travis's foot drew closer, Max's instincts, honed by years of combat training, surged to the surface, his muscles tensed, his focused gaze never wavering from the intruder. The park fell silent, the air thick with tension, as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Travis's laughter echoed through the park as he lifted his foot higher, clearly reveling in the tension he was creating. "Come on, show me what you've got," he sneered. My fingers tightened around Max's leash, my knuckles turning white. I couldn't see the scene unfolding, but the energy in the air felt like an electric threat. Yet Max remained perfectly still, his body coiled like a spring, his growl now lower, warning Travis that his next move might be his last mistake. A small crowd had gathered, frozen, unsure whether to step in. Some pulled out their phones to record the confrontation, while others whispered nervously that someone should stop him. "She is paralyzed and blind," one man muttered, but no one stepped forward. My voice cracked with desperation as I called out again, "Leave us alone. He's not just a dog, he'll defend himself." But my warning only fueled Travis's recklessness. "You mean your dog will attack me?" he scoffed. "He's just a big lapdog." With that, Travis lunged forward, his foot aimed at Max. The German Shepherd sprang into action with a speed that stunned everyone. Dodging the kick, Max let out a sharp, commanding bark that echoed through the park. In one fluid motion, he positioned himself between me and Travis, baring his razor-sharp teeth, his eyes locked on the man. This wasn't the behavior of an ordinary dog. It was the response of a professional, a protector trained to neutralize threats. Travis stumbled back, caught off guard by the intensity radiating from Max. For a brief moment, everything seemed to freeze. I gripped the leash tightly, feeling the vibrations from Max's movements and the tension in the air. I knew something had shifted. "Max," I whispered, my voice trembling. The dog didn't turn to look at me. His focus remained entirely on Travis, ready for whatever came next. Travis, on the other hand, wasn't laughing anymore. His confident smirk had faded, replaced by a flicker of unease. "What the hell's wrong with this dog?" he muttered, his voice no longer mocking, but uncertain. As the crowd whispered and phones captured every second, a man in a security uniform finally pushed through. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice firm and resolute. Travis froze, his bravado vanishing as he realized he'd become the center of unwanted attention. Max held his position, his body language making it clear that if Travis tried anything again, the outcome wouldn't favor him. I let out a shaky breath, feeling the tension in the leash ease slightly, but I knew the danger wasn't over yet. Travis cautiously stepped back, his hands raised slightly as if to downplay his actions. "Relax, man. I was just messing around. The dog's overreacting," he mumbled, though his voice lacked the confidence it had moments before. The security guard stepped between Travis and me, arms crossed, his expression stern. "You call threatening a guide dog messing around? That's not just reckless. It's illegal." I clung to Max's leash, still trembling. Max stood firm in front of me, his intense gaze fixed on Travis. The tension in the air was palpable, and the crowd's murmurs only heightened the unease. The guard continued, his voice steady but unwavering. "This dog's doing its job to protect her, and from the looks of it, it's better at its job than you are at being a decent human." Travis's smirk vanished completely as the guard's words sank in, while Max's growl still hadn't stopped. My hand instinctively reached down to touch his head. "Good boy, Max," I whispered, my voice shaky but filled with gratitude. The crowd around us watched in silence, some recording the scene on their phones, others murmuring in hushed tones. But then an older man stepped forward. His weathered military cap caught the sunlight, and his voice cut through the whispers. "That's no ordinary dog," he said, calm but certain. His rugged face spoke of years of experience, and he pointed directly at Max. "I'd recognize that stance anywhere. It's a K9. The crowd gasped, and even Travis looked taken aback. My brows furrowed in confusion as I turned toward the man. "What do you mean?" "He's my guide dog," I said, gripping the leash tighter, my voice barely above a whisper. The man stepped closer, nodding slowly. "He may be your guide dog now, but I'd bet he served in the military before this. That bark, it's the instinct only a trained military dog has." I leaned down beside Max, my fingers running through his thick fur as if seeing him in a new light. "Max," I whispered, my voice trembling with awe and disbelief. I'd always known Max was special, but I'd never imagined his past carried such weight. The man continued, his voice steady, but respectful. "Dogs like him are heroes. They're trained for war zones, to protect soldiers and take down threats." He glanced at Travis, his gaze sharp, and the biker shifted uncomfortably, his confidence fading further. If he reacted like that, it's because he saw that man as a danger. Travis's bravado had completely evaporated. He took another step back, his shoulders slumping. "I didn't know," he muttered, his voice almost inaudible. The security guard stepped closer to him, his tone firm. Ignorance doesn't excuse your actions. You're lucky this dog showed restraint. Max finally relaxed slightly, but kept his eyes on Travis, as if ensuring the man wouldn't try anything else. I let out a shaky breath, my heart still pounding as I processed what I'd just learned. The crowd buzzed with amazement, unable to take their eyes off Max. To them, he was no longer just a guide dog. He was a warrior. The park security guard looked at Travis with a mix of authority and disgust. "You're done here," he said, gesturing for the man to leave. But Travis hesitated, his gaze flickering uncertainly between Max and the older man who'd identified the dog's true nature. Then, with his crew, he retreated to his motorcycle and rode off from the park. The sound of the motorcycles faded into the distance, replaced by the buzz of people talking about what they'd just witnessed. Max stayed by my side, still alert, his body tense, though I noticed a slight tremble in his front paws. I felt the vibration through the leash, leaned down and touched the German Shepherd's fur. "Max, it's okay now, buddy," I murmured, trying to calm him. But Max seemed hesitant, his gaze still fixed on where Travis had disappeared, as if he knew the man wasn't just a fleeting threat, but a problem that might resurface. I gently touched Max's muzzle and whispered, "You're sensing something, aren't you?" Though simple, those words carried a profound weight, reflecting the unshakable trust I had in my loyal companion. The crowd around us began to disperse slowly, though some lingered nearby, still curious. The man who'd confronted Travis stepped toward me, a look of concern on his face. "You okay?" he asked, his voice still steady. I nodded, but my furrowed brows betrayed the worry inside me. "I'm fine, but Max, he's never reacted like this before. He knows when something's wrong, and that makes me nervous." The older man who'd intervened earlier stepped closer. "Listen, son," he began, his voice deep and wise. "Dogs like him have instincts far beyond what we can understand. He didn't react like that by chance. You should trust him, and maybe keep an eye out for that guy, Travis. He doesn't seem like the type to give up easily." The stranger's words resonated with me. I gently tightened my grip on Max's leash. The German Shepherd looked at him, his eyes conveying something words couldn't capture. The moment was interrupted by a distant sound, the rumble of engines. They weren't closer, but they hadn't entirely faded either. I took a deep breath and patted Max's head. Maybe it's just my imagination, I thought, but the tremor in Max's body told me otherwise. What I didn't know was that this incident was just the beginning of something much bigger, something that would test not only Max's loyalty, but my own strength to face the unexpected. The tension seemed to finally dissipate, but not for Max. Though he lay beside me, his breathing was faster than usual, his eyes vigilant to every movement around us. Sensing his restlessness, I decided it was time to leave the park. I grabbed the leash, and my wheelchair began to roll slowly. I offered a nervous smile to the few people still nearby. "Thanks for sticking around. I think Max and I need some fresh air," I said, before maneuvering my wheelchair toward home. The walk through the park was something Max and I did every day, but that morning, each step felt significant. The silence was broken only by the sound of Max's paws on the pavement and the gentle clink of his leash. I couldn't see the world around me, but Max's behavior spoke volumes more than any sight could. He was tense, his posture signaling he was on high alert, a subtle but constant reminder that something still wasn't right. When we reached my small apartment, I unclipped the leash, letting Max roam freely in the space. "You're acting strange today, buddy," I remarked as I fumbled around the kitchen counter to find his water bowl. The German Shepherd moved slowly through the apartment, sniffing every corner as if conducting an inspection. Finally, he stopped at the door, sitting silently but with his ears perked, listening for any sound from outside. Noticing this, I frowned. "What's going on, Max? You never do this," As I sat on the couch, trying to process the morning's events, I began recalling the stories I'd heard about Max before adopting him. I knew he'd been a K9, but I'd never learned all the details. That Max had served in tough situations, that his ability to detect danger had saved lives. And now it seemed those instincts were resurfacing. "You're trying to tell me something, aren't you, boy?" I asked, running my hand through his soft fur. Max responded with a slight wag of his tail, but his eyes never left the door. Maybe he was waiting for something to happen next that you and I wouldn't know about. Or maybe Max had met people as bossy as Travis, and he knew that Travis wouldn't stop his stupid actions until he learned a lesson he would never forget. The distant rumble of a motorcycle sounded again, almost inaudible. Max lifted his head, his entire body tensing once more. I didn't hear the sound, but I felt the dog's reaction. I placed a hand on Max's shoulder, as I often did to comfort him. "Whatever happens, we're in this together," I said softly. I had no idea that promise would soon be tested in ways I could never have imagined. Evening settled quietly over the small neighborhood, wrapping it in a blanket of peace. I sat at my modest dining table, carefully slicing an apple while Max rested beside me. The tension from earlier lingered in the room, an unspoken weight neither Max nor I could shake. My fingers brushed through Max's fur as I spoke, almost to myself. "Maybe I'm just overthinking this, huh, buddy?" I muttered. Max's ears twitched, his sharp eyes staring at the front door, as if he sensed something I couldn't see. Outside, the stillness was broken by the faint hum of an engine, soft at first, then growing louder and clearer. Max immediately stiffened, his gaze locked on the door. I felt the shift and froze. "What is it, Max?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with worry. The engine suddenly cut off, followed by a heavy silence that pressed against the thin walls of the apartment. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling slightly. "Stay calm," I whispered to myself, though my heart pounded in my chest. Minutes later, a knock echoed through the apartment, sharp and deliberate. Max growled low, positioning himself between me and the door. I hesitated before standing, gripping Max's leash tightly. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice firm but cautious. There was no immediate answer, only a faint murmur outside. My pulse quickened. I could feel Max's tension through the leash, his readiness to defend if needed. "I'm not opening the door until you say who you are," I declared. Finally, a voice responded, deep and vaguely familiar. "Relax, man. It's just me, Travis." The words sent a chill down my spine. Max barked fiercely, his growl deepening. I tightened my grip on the leash as I stepped back, putting more distance between us and the door. "What do you want?" I asked, my tone edged with suspicion. Travis's voice shifted, trying to sound casual, but carrying an undertone of menace. "Just wanna talk, man. No hard feelings from earlier, right?" I didn't respond immediately, my mind racing through my options. Max sensed the gravity of the moment, remaining calm yet vigilant. The silence stretched on, and I could feel the weight of Travis's presence just beyond the door. "You need to leave," I finally said, my voice even but resolute. The murmurs outside grew louder, followed by the sound of retreating footsteps. But Max didn't relax. Neither did I. Something about the encounter felt unfinished, like a storm gathering just beyond the horizon. The uneasy silence after Travis left didn't last long. I paced the living room, my fingers tracing the familiar edges of the furniture as I tried to calm my thoughts. But Max was restless. He moved to the window, his large frame tense, as he sniffed the air and stared into the darkness. "What is it, Max?" I wondered aloud, more to myself than to the dog. The unease in my chest was growing, a certainty that Travis wasn't done with whatever game he was playing. Minutes later, a sound, muffled footsteps, broke the silence, deliberately circling the perimeter of the apartment building. Max let out a sharp bark, his body coiling like a spring. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. I reached for the phone on the kitchen counter, my fingers fumbling as I dialed 911. "Stay calm," I whispered to myself, though every nerve in my body was screaming. Max moved to stand by the door, his growl low and steady, a warning reverberating through the small apartment. I connected with the emergency dispatcher, my voice trembling as I explained the situation. "There's someone outside my apartment," I said, clutching Max's leash. "With the way my dog's growling, I think they mean trouble." The dispatcher assured me police were on their way, but the minutes dragged on like hours. Outside, the footsteps grew closer, purposeful. Then came the sound of something scraping against the window, a slow, menacing noise that sent a chill down my spine. The scraping stopped abruptly, followed by a stifled curse from outside. Max barked again, louder this time, his body pressing against the door as if daring the intruder to come closer. I gripped Max's leash and retreated to the corner of the room, my mind racing. I felt helpless, relying on Max's instincts and hoping help would arrive in time. "They're coming," I told myself. "Max," I whispered, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. "Hold on." Finally, the faint wail of police sirens cut through the tense atmosphere. The footsteps outside stopped immediately, followed by the sound of someone fleeing. Max remained on high alert, his growl softening but not disappearing entirely. I let out a shaky breath, clutching the phone as I murmured into it, "They're here, thank you." Relief flooded me for a moment, though it was tinged with the realization that this wasn't over. Travis had crossed a line, and I knew I needed to prepare for whatever came next. Flashing red and blue lights painted the street in an eerie glow as two officers approached my apartment. Max stayed vigilant by the door, his ears perked and body rigid. I cautiously opened the door, feeling the cool night air brush against my face. "Police, thank you for coming," I said, my voice even despite the fear still lingering in my chest. Max didn't relax, his sharp eyes darting toward the darkness outside, as if sensing danger still lurking. The officers asked me to recount everything, taking notes as I described the earlier confrontation with Travis and the unsettling sounds around the apartment. "He didn't do anything physical," I admitted, gripping Max's leash. "But he's unpredictable, and I know he'll be back." One officer knelt to pet Max, though the dog remained tense, his gaze fixed on the perimeter. "A dog's instincts are sharp," the officer said. "If he's this worked up, you're right to be cautious." As the officers swept the area, they found fresh footprints near my window. They followed the trail, but found no sign of Travis or his friends. "He's probably long gone by now," one of them said, though their tone didn't inspire confidence. They advised me to stay inside, keep my phone close, and call if anything else happened. "We'll increase patrols in the area," the other officer assured me. "But if you feel unsafe, don't hesitate to leave for the night." I nodded, though I had no intention of running. This was my home, and I wouldn't let Travis take that from me. After the officers left, the apartment felt heavier with silence. I sat on the edge of my bed, Max lying at my feet, still watchful. I reached down to stroke his back, the familiar motion calming him. "I don't know what's coming next, Max," I whispered, "but I know you'll be ready." Max's ears twitched at the sound of my voice, and for the first time that evening, his tail gave a slight wag, a small moment of reassurance amid the uncertainty. Eventually, I drifted into a fitful, restless sleep. Max stayed vigilant, positioned by the door, his body a protective barrier between me and the outside world. The bond between us had never felt stronger, forged in the fire of shared fear and trust. Whatever Travis had planned, one thing was certain: I wouldn't face it alone. Max wasn't just a guide dog or a former Kekinka. He was a guardian, a partner, and a reminder of the strength that comes from standing together. I want to tell you that even though the world can sometimes feel scary and people like Travis might make you feel small, you're not alone. Trust in the strength inside you, and if you can, find a companion like my Max, whether human or animal, to face the challenges with you. Don't let fear silence you. Your voice matters, and your resilience will make bullies back down.